You're listening to Money Talks. My name is Michael Campbell. Money Talks is brought to you by Solera Club. Solera Club is a royalty-based investment, which means that you get paid first. There are no fees attached to it, and it's in the tech sector. So for more information, go to soleraclub.com. A little thought piece today to start the program, and I can hear people going, oh no, let's tune out of this. I didn't know that thinking may be involved. I already have all my opinions. Well, don't worry, this won't take long. As I commented on Friday, this week Uber announced that later this month it would introduce self-driving cars as part of a service in Philadelphia. We're talking August here. But the news barely rated a mention in the mainstream media, and when it was mentioned, it was more like a novelty item. Well, forgive me, but I don't see the potential job loss of around 75,000 jobs, taxi drivers, truck drivers, delivery jobs of all types over the next decade. I don't see that as a novelty. You know, Apple, Google, Audi, BMW, Tesla, Mercedes-Benz, Ford, GM, all working on self-driving cars. Testing's taking place all over North America. Google, Ford, GM have all made it clear they're getting into ride sharing. But Uber's starting now, on the road with passengers. And there's no sign that anyone in the political establishment, politicians, organized labor, media commentariat, the educational establishment, has any idea as to the implications. I say that because any other time 75,000 jobs were threatened, I think they'd be jumping up and down. They'd be declaring their deep concern to anyone who'd listen. I can only conclude that they don't get it, which makes their ability to provide leadership more than suspect. I mean, no kidding, Sherlock. But they prove it every day. It's impressive, but nothing wakes these people up. How do they do it? How do they stay asleep that long? And you know what? I think this is what we get when merit is no longer the criteria for selection. But maybe they simply don't understand what the Boston Consulting Group or people like Princeton's head of their transportation program, Elaine Kornhauser, mean when they say that self-driving robo-taxis could revolutionize city driving, allowing consumers, think about this, to share a commute not only for less than the cost of a traditional taxi, but for less than the all-in cost of a subway ride. Oh no, this is profound. But my point is, when I first started talking about the implication of self-driving cars, they were still years away. But now we're talking Uber is putting a self-driving car, or more than one, self-driving cars on the road at the end of the month with passengers. Their idea is to get started, to collect the data, and in conjunction with Volvo, who happens to be the cars that they're going to use to begin with. And they're going to make adjustments. They'll use other manufacturers too as we go along. But they're going to make adjustments on the fly. They're going to continue to innovate. This is happening now. But the implications are revolutionary. Think about this. Insurance companies, you're going to have fewer accidents. That means fewer claims. Maybe they need fewer adjusters. Maybe premiums are lower for drivers. Maybe they need less office space. Healthcare, this may be some of the best news healthcare's had in decades, because there'll be fewer accidents. It's going to mean significantly less body injury patients, less rehab. You're not going to have to see as many doctors at that time, reduce maybe waiting times on that basis, open up time in operating rooms. I mean, think about this. In Canada, there's 165,000 injuries a year from car accidents, 10,000 serious, 1,800 to 2,000 deaths, tens of billions in losses. Well, self-driving cars, trucks, buses are going to dramatically reduce those numbers, which means major savings for healthcare. But think about this. Fewer accidents also means auto body shops could see significantly less work, which could impact employment. Fewer accidents will mean lower policing costs. There'll be much more on all of this, but I think you get the point. But self-driving vehicles are just one aspect of the tech revolution. Of course they are. I mean, we've been talking 3D printing, cloud computing, Internet of Things, robotics. They're all reaching into every aspect of society. But here's my point. They're rarely mentioned in our most prominent public debates. And that's simply not good enough. But why aren't they mentioned? Well, maybe it's ignorance. Maybe it's intellectual laziness. I mean, also to talk about the tech revolution clearly doesn't fit some political agendas. I mean, come on. How does that fit into Justin Trudeau's sunny days message? If he starts walking around saying, hey, guess what? Some occupations are about to disappear. They're going to be eliminated, and with them tens of thousands of jobs. Certainly no opposition leader is going to walk around saying, hey, elect me, because there's big job losses coming. But I think there's another reason. that we have so little public leadership on the file. And that's my point today. So little public leadership. Organized labor shows no sign they have a clue what's going on. Our politicians, our educational establishment, that's my point. But why? Well, you know what? I suspect that our leaders can't imagine what's going on. They can't imagine this future brought about by technological changes like self-driving cars. That's why governments are always in reaction mode. I mean, come on. Look at how municipal governments have scrambled to react to Uber and Airbnb. I mean, it's pathetic. I mean, governments' collective heads swim with the thought of robo-taxis, the implication of self-driving buses, and product delivery by drone, let alone personal flying vehicles, that I think are coming probably in the next decade. Well, they can't imagine it. So they continue with business as usual. I mean, it's just ridiculous to see politicians talk about transit planning without taking into account the impact of self-driving vehicles. I mean, forgive the cliche, but they might as well be talking about horses and buggies. The world's going to look distinctly different before those plans are implemented. Businesses, when businesses don't recognize or better still anticipate the impact of technological change, they go bankrupt. But in government simply becomes irrelevant. We pass them by, and I'll give you a quick example. Think of how much learning occurs online right now and bypasses our public education system. That'll be tough for some people to get, but the evidence is very clear. Think of the CRTC. Are you kidding? How out of touch can you be in a world with social media and streaming content? But it's about control. And old government models loved control the population through regulation. But it's passing them by, as I say. They didn't anticipate Uber. And when Uber showed up, they didn't have a clue about it, and they still don't in most jurisdictions in Canada. But that list is much longer. But it's about governments losing control, and they hate it. But in the meantime, the change takes place whether you send me a hate email, whether you don't want your job to be eliminated, or you don't want the opportunities that are afforded by this. It's still all going to happen. You're listening to Money Talks, brought to you by Solera Club. For more information, go to soleraclub.com. I'm taking a break and coming back. Here's a new twist on the negative interest rate stories. Banks are going to just start charging like it's a safety deposit box on large. I'm going to talk with Michael Levy about that. Plus, I got a big fat idea for you. Everybody's searching for yield in this low interest rate world. I've got an idea for you. Plus, I've got Eric Coffin coming up. This guy did a fabulous job for us last time up. Every one of his recommendations went up significantly more on the Money Talks Network. You know, any time that a government takes in a policy, it's difficult for them to anticipate all the other ramifications of it. That's why we get these really nasty unintended consequences. I'm fascinated to see a story coming out of Europe that says, now keep in mind, when a bank stores its money with the central bank, it now has to pay for that privilege because of negative interest rates. And the implications, again, start spreading out. And again, politicians, central bankers haven't anticipated this. Michael Levy joins me on the line right now. Mike, as I say, big stuff when you look at the bank storing money with the central bank. But presto, they got a problem because they're paying for that right.
They're paying for that right. You're right, Mike. And they are now looking, great story in the Financial Times this week out of London. They're looking for a cheap way to store cash as rates go further negative. But, Mike, before I get to this, apropos of your editorial, I just... this story is just blowing me away because it's not out there somewhere, but Ford actually aims to have self-driving cars in ride-sharing companies like Uber or Lyft in 2021. The CEO of Ford, Mark Fields, was on this week all over the media saying it's not out there somewhere. It's not out there, way out there. This is by 2023. Imagine a car, no steering wheel, no gas pedals, no brakes, Mike, and that's coming up.
Yeah, I know. That's the part that blew me away, by the way, in looking at this story and following it. I appreciate that people are going to listen and say, well, I'm not ready for that. It doesn't matter. It's still going to happen, and you will be ready by the time it goes. I mean, I love those kind of safety things. I mean, the good news is we're seeing accidents go down already, et cetera. I love the new sensors in the car I have because I'm a terrible driver. It helps me be a better driver, but this is like a further evolution up there. I'm just loving the idea of no steering wheel.
Well, yeah, and Mike, the first cars are going to go to Uber and the other ride-hailing services we talked about, But, take a step back. Day before yesterday, Bloomberg, the story broke that the first autonomous cars are going to be Volvo XC90s this summer
Yeah.
in Pittsburgh. Now, they're going to have a supervised assistant in the car because it is the first of a kind. But when you hail a Uber in downtown Pittsburgh, randomly you could be picked up by one of these self-driving cars with a technician in the car, and they're going to have 100 on the road in Pittsburgh, these new Volvos, by the end of summer.
Yeah, what's interesting about that is they're taking the attitude as we've tested the hell out of these things. And so now we're going to put it in real live testing, gather the data all the way through. And apparently one of the things they're concerned about, Mike, is bridges. And there's 500 bridges in Pittsburgh, so it wasn't chosen by randomly or by chance. And they want to just keep on developing the technology when it comes to things like bridges, because let's think about that. You make a mistake in the roadway there, presto, you've got a problem, you're drowning.
Oh, yeah.
So, But yeah, so it's interesting. I find that incredible. That's one of my big points is it's happening now. Man, here comes my car. No one's going to be driving it, But of course, as you say, technicians in the car, they're going to be keeping the data, all of that stuff. But it's happening.
Mike, I just want to give you just one anecdotal piece. We were just in New York last week. We took an Uber X, so it took all 7 of us from LaGuardia Airport to downtown Manhattan. The bill was $25. Now, take the driver out of that car and have a driverless car take you there, a driverless Uber take you there. Can you imagine the falling costs of transportation? And those drivers will be out of work.
Yeah, no, that's what I'm all on about, and you don't hear anybody from the establishment talking about this stuff. Hey, Mike, let's get on to the banks for a sec, because this is one of the implications, as I alluded to. So, a normal bank like Mike's Bank puts its money with the central bank, it's storing it there, and now costs me money to do that. And that's got, I think it was $2.6 billion it costs a Euro Center bank since rates started to go negative. So now we're hearing about them instead going back from electronic back into cash so they can just keep it themselves.
Well, Mike, they're sort of a break-even or tolerance level there. The rates have to be under 0.75% in order for it to pay for the storage and the insurance. And with talk of further rate reductions by the European central banks, we've got Switzerland right now at -0.75%. But just think of this: there's 2.075 trillion euros in circulation held by banks, and that's 1.1 trillion in circulation, 988 trillion in the banks. And if the rates go further negative, why not go to the central bank, get cash? 500 euro notes, by the way, are the biggest notes in Europe. And Mike, that's the equivalent of Canadian $730 in one note, and store the cash instead, pay the insurance, pay for the storage, and you're going to be far better off as a bank than having negative interest rates eat away at the capital as it sits on deposit.
I love it, Mike. It's bringing back bank robbery.
in terms that we have never heard of before. But, Mike, just one more stat. This Financial Times article was very fascinating. That 2.75 trillion euros, because of the 500 euro note, would only fill 298 moving vans. In other words, it's not a huge storage problem.
Sounds like you're planning the robbery now. Michael, go out and have a terrific weekend. Thanks.
You too, Mike.
Hey, if you're searching for yield, we got the guy for you. We're talking Mike's big fat idea coming up. Stay with us on the Money Talks Network. Coming up, I've got Eric Coffin. He joined us a few months ago, made a series of recommendations. The average move in them was 300%. We're talking gold with Eric Coffin coming up in just a few minutes' time. Right now, though, very pleased to welcome back to the show Jamie Switzer. He's the Senior Vice President of Raymond James, because it's time for the big fat idea. What about it, Jamie? What do you have for us this week?
Talk about preferred shares and how they can enhance an income component of your portfolio.
It's interesting, dealing with people as you do. This is such a huge challenge for people, is looking for yield. That 1%, we just talked with Mike Levy about negative rates throughout Europe, but this 1% just doesn't cut it anymore.
No, and the province of Ontario issued a 1.35% 6-year bond this week that actually sold out, if you can believe it. So, the search for yield's really tough, and preferred shares are unlike bonds and GICs, in that they qualify for the dividend tax credit. So that's huge for investors because not only do they generally pay a higher yield, but it's also more tax efficient.
Yeah, let's come back to that just for a sec. And I know I'll use really simple numbers, but and again, obviously we're talking the average taxpayer, but I mean, of course, what you end up after the tax man is what counts in anything, but in our investments, obviously.
Absolutely.
And so, give me a quick number here. So, for example, if I got a 3% yield in a bond, but I got 3% in a dividend, what would that be the equivalent as if it was a bond yield? Because, of course, interest is 100% tax like income, but as you said, there's a dividend tax credit. So what would that be the equivalent? 3% dividend yield, what would that be the equivalent if I got it in my bank account?
Obviously, it's different with each tax rate, but you're looking at generally a third higher after tax.
So, yeah, it's sort of like getting a little 4%. Bonus of a third. Yeah,
right.
Exactly. So that's obviously one of the big deals here. What about, I mean, should I then go out and buy one or two of them or I mean, there's some quality companies out there, or do you have would you prefer doing it differently?
Well, there is. I mean, a lot of people are comfortable just holding good quality names. The problem is it's not the issuer, it's the interest rate that affects the performance of the underlying security. So you generally want to diversify. If you've got a large portfolio, you can buy a basket, but a lot of investors like the ETFs, like the BMO issues one that's not only diversified across the products that they hold in the basket, but also the duration. So you don't get hit by all the press maturing at the same time. So they're a five-year diversification.
That's a great example. Do you know what the symbol is for that, by the way? I'll put you on the spot.
Yeah, that's okay. It's ZPR, and it yields 5.37 right now. So it's very attractive, and it's also come down because the whole universe is sold off with rates coming down even further. So it's a good opportunity.
Yeah. So again, you look at that's just an example. I mean, I'm very big on exchange traded funds, at least as a consideration. You talk with your professional about them, but there's an example. You get this diversification. It doesn't cost you very much to get that diversification.
That's right.
And as you say, I really like that thing you're bringing up, though, Jamie, which is it also makes sure that not all your preferreds are maturing at the same time.
Right.
That is sort of ladder them out across that. I mean, obviously, this has got to be appropriate for somebody who's obviously looking for yield. I mean, usually these are pretty conservative investments.
Well, historically, it's been the widows and orphans type of thing where you're getting your steady income and not a lot of volatility. But in recent years, they've done the fixed reset pref, and what's happened with those is they were just resetting at such low rates because they're tied to the government 5-year that they sold off a lot more than most people were used to. So it's provided a lot of opportunity for traders as well as people that are looking for steady yield.
And how long, I mean, you don't buy these if I'm trying to trade them out next week, do you?
No, I mean, I wouldn't. I think it's an anomaly the way things traded in the last while, and it did bring in more of the trading environment. But generally, if you're buying good quality and with an appropriate yield, you're going to be pretty safe in a lot of these. The ones that have gotten beaten up are not going to, you're not going to have to worry about those anymore. You buy the ones that are coming out now at the new fixed rate, and they're more appropriately priced in this rate environment, and they're going to be pretty safe.
Well, good stuff, Jamie. I really appreciate you finding time. Jamie is a senior VP at Raymond James. I'll come back. I got Eric Coffin.
Thanks, Mike.